women. Natalie Bennett was elected leader of the Green Party just last month at the Green Party conference. And during this time, Natalie is going to speak about her kind of vision for the future of the Greens, and after that there's going to be an opportunity for a question and answer session as well. So without any further ado, I'll hand you over to Natalie Bennett. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for those of you who are either at university for the first time or back at university and giving up one of those very precious early evenings in the semester for coming on tonight. I've spent today doing a tour of York in the capable hands of York Green Party. I've been a leader now for exactly 50 days. I was with the London Young Greens last night and someone counted it out and it's exactly 50 days. And I can pretty well say that York has given me the best cycle tour I've had yet as leader. That may also be because it's the only cycle tour I've had yet as leader. But nonetheless, as I cycled around York and I saw all of the cycle lanes, all of the 20 mile per hour zones, all of the solar panels that the Green councillors had helped to achieve, I saw all of the impact that having two Green councillors here in York had. I'm confident that at the end of the year I'm going to be saying, when I'm handing out prizes, York was the best cycle tour. So well done with that. You're not, however, I'm afraid, going to win the best mud. The River Ouse tried very hard, went through some really good patches, but a couple of weeks ago I was at the protests against the proposed new Hinkley nuclear power station. I'm afraid the River Ouse mud just doesn't live up to the Somerset mud. The Somerset mud just cakes on your boots and gets deeper and deeper and deeper until you're about a foot taller than you were before. So, not quite to that. As you might gather from those couple of anecdotes, I'm doing a lot of travelling at the moment. And that, I think, is a really exciting sign of the degree of interest around the country in Green Party and Green politics. Now, 50 days ago, I took over from Caroline Lucas, and there was a lot of concern, uncertainty, because Caroline Lucas had been the first leader that the Green Party had. Caroline Lucas was and is our first MP. And how would it be with having a leader who wasn't an MP? Well, I think thus far it's working out very well. I now have, I'm told, a post box at the House of Commons. It's Natalie Bennett MP. No, I'm not one actually, but people think that if you're the leader of a party, you must be an MP. So that's one of the roles I'm going to fulfill. But much more than that, in a way that Caroline simply can't as an MP, I'm travelling around the country, meeting people, talking to people, hearing from you what you're concerned about and what you're interested in. And I think that's really important. Because this is a really huge time for the Green Party. It's very clear that the old answers, the direction we've been pursuing for the last 3 decades or more, what you might call the Thatcherite direction, isn't working, can't work, and has profoundly broken our economic system and has done huge damage to our planet. All of those things are now very clear and very obvious. Neoliberalism, let's just leave it to the bankers, they're geniuses and they'll work it all out and everything will be fine, very clearly hasn't worked, cannot work. We need new economic directions. The idea that it's absolutely fine if Britain just does banking and services, and the Chinese and the Sri Lankans can do all our manufacturing, we can grow our beans in Kenya and our peas in Peru, that all of those things we can work fine on that basis. It's patently obvious that can't continue, and it has indeed broken the situation of the world we have now. But the sad thing is, the Green Party is at the moment in Britain the only party that actually gets that really understands that it's not just a matter of tweaking a few things about the old ways we were doing things and everything will then be fine. The fact is we need a fundamental change in direction. At the moment, the government is cutting. It might feel pretty bad for many people already, but the fact is we've only seen the impact of about 20% of the cuts they can in government spending, in government services, in government benefits. And there's a very old saying that I'd love to go to the camera and give them a shake and say, when you're in a hole, don't keep digging. It's very clear that what we need to do in Britain is invest in the future. We need to invest many things out that require government investment. And what that government investment would mean jobs. So instead of what's happening now with the government cutting services, cutting jobs, taking people who are working and paying their taxes and providing essential services and throwing them into unemployment, which means you have to pay unemployment benefits and you're getting no tax, you'd be building new jobs and doing the things we need to do. And much more than that, we need to entirely reshape the British economy. We need to return manufacturing back to Britain. It should be that your entire wardrobe, from your shoes to your jacket, should be made here in Britain, ideally somewhere near where you live. We need to bring the food growing back to Britain. The fact is, at the moment in Britain, we get our fruit. Only 7% of our fruit is grown in Britain. This is from a country that used to be famous. Kent was famous for its apple orchards. Surrey was famous for its pears. Every town and city was once surrounded by a ring of market gardens. And food came freshly on a very short supply chain from nearby to you, to your local shop and onto your plate. And the fact is, that's where we need to go back to. We need to go back to that because we need to build solid, strong local economies where, for example, we're seeing in Bristol, a very successful Bristol pound, where money circulates round and round in a town rather than going into the nearest Tesco and then wishing off to the nearest tax haven, which is the kind of thing that we're seeing with the kind of economy we have now. What we need to do is build strong local economies with local businesses, local cooperatives, building strong, small communities that work together. And we need to do that not just because of the economics, although that's a pretty powerful item on its own. We also need to do that because at the moment in Britain, we're living as though we had 3 planets. The level of our consumption is like that. There was 3 planets that we could keep mining and polluting and pumping out carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and we can't continue that. And so what we can do is we can fix our economy and fix our environment together. So there I've been talking about the big picture. And we need to focus on that when we're thinking about politics. But we also very much need to focus on the everyday. Because the fact is that although Britain is the 6th richest economy in the world, there are millions of people who don't know where the money for tomorrow's food is coming from. There are millions of people who don't know where next month's rent is coming from. Millions more who don't know where next month's mortgage payment is coming from. And even those people who are fairly comfortable about that, there's not many who really feel secure and think my job will still be there next year, in 2 years' time, in 5 years' time. And there's very, very few indeed. In fact, we might say it's really only the 1% that Occupy talk about, who think my children's future is secure, I don't have to worry about how they're going to get a job, build a life, get a home. The fact is that the economic model we've been using has failed to deliver security and a decent life, and that's despite the fact that we are a very rich country. So we need to acknowledge that, and we need to talk about some really concrete things. Now, one of the things that I was talking to our councillors here in York today, that they've done a lot of work on, is the living wage. The fact is, it's absolutely obscene that you can work for 40 hours a week and not earn enough money to live on. If you work for 40 hours a week, you should earn a decent wage, and at the moment you can earn a minimum wage and you won't have enough money to live on. Now what's been happening and what the last Labor government did, instead of making the minimum wage a living wage, as they should have done, they brought in a whole lot of government benefits. They brought in tax credits, they brought in housing benefit. Now you hear David Cameron talking a lot about housing benefit, we've got to cut it because it's those unemployed people who are lying, staying in bed, and they're collecting housing benefit while all those hard-working people are going out and earning wage instead. The fact is, over the past 5 years, 93% of the new housing benefit has gone to people in work. They're not being paid a sufficient wage to actually be able to pay for a roof over their own heads. And what that housing benefit is and what tax credits that they've often had to have to live on too is actually corporate welfare. what's happening is because large multinational companies have huge staff all of the minimum wage, the government subsidises their wages, but that's actually subsidising multinational companies because that money is effectively going straight from the government coffers into the coffers of the companies because they're not paying decent wages. And the Green Party, we absolutely defend existing welfare benefits, but we don't defend corporate welfare. And we need to, one of the key things we need to do, we need to campaign for, and we need to win, is for the minimum wage to be a living wage. That's an absolutely foundational, basic thing that we've got to win. Something else that I can pretty well guarantee, I actually did a hustings with the Fulham Chelsea Conservative Association last week. The Young Conservative Association of Fulham and Chelsea, which for those who don't know London, this is the wealthiest flat cost £1 million part of London. And I even got head nods on this issue with this one, which is quite simple. We need to renationalise the railways. The fact is that the privatisation, the private structure of the railways is currently costing us £1 billion a year. You can do a lot with £1 billion, but if we just work it out in the railways, that would, if you put it in fares, that would take 18% off the cost of every train fare. When you want to go home for the holidays or go off to visit friends somewhere else, 18% off your train fare, that's what we would do. And I also spoke earlier about benefits. We have to acknowledge that there are and always will be some people in our society who need our help. And as I said, Britain is a wealthy society. We should be giving the help to people who need it. Not grudgingly, not in a, well, we'll make you drop through 16 hoops and fill in this 56-page form and make you feel really guilty about it kind of way, but just in a way that acknowledges you need help, we will give you that help. Now, we've seen a huge drive, particularly in the right-wing press, against benefits. You can basically cut open the Mail or the Sun without finding some lurid tale of someone claiming disability benefits while they're off dancing on the high life on the Costa de Brava while having a lovely time. What they don't say is that the amount of benefits that are claimed fraudulently is 0.6%. 99.4% of benefits are absolutely fairly given, and huge amounts of benefits go unclaimed. £16 billion a year in benefits go unclaimed. People don't take what they're entitled to. And what we've seen, particularly with people with disabilities, we've seen a huge amount of demonisation, and that has real consequences for people's lives. I belong to a campaigning list that's campaigning against the absolutely dreadful ATOS and the tests they run for disability living allowance and disability benefits. And there's a story in that list that made me want to rage and cry at the same time. A disabled woman was standing at a bus stop leaning on a stick, waiting for the bus. And a young man came up and kicked the stick out from underneath her. And she fell over. And he said, "Oh, so you're not faking it then?" And that's what the demonisation of the disabled is doing. It's creating an atmosphere where people are being abused in the street, are being attacked. And we absolutely have to stand up and say, people need our help, they deserve our help, and we absolutely should not be treating them as though they are therefore somehow owe us or deserve to be abused by us. I'm afraid the Green Party is the only party you'll find standing up here saying things like that. I'd really love to see the Labour Party saying that. I'm not going to hold my breath. I'd really love to see the Labour Party saying they want to renationalise the railways. And that one I have some hopes on, actually. Because the Labour Party at the moment is wobbling all over the place like a blancmange on the question of railways. And one of the things we can do in the Green Party, we can work very hard to get elected, but one of the other things we can do is work very hard to support and campaign for our policies. And I believe that if we go around and get the reaction that I just got in this room when I said renationalise the railways, and go around the country and explain why it makes absolute sense, that we might just shift the Labour Party to a sensible position on that. And that's one of the ways in which the Green Party influences. But it's not just the Green Party. there is a whole green movement out there, and I'm sure there are many people in this room who are parts of that green movement. I'd include in that Occupy, UK Uncut, Transitional Towns, Greenpeace, Friends of the Earth, all of those groups. And I regard the Green Party as your political wing. I very much believe in direct action, as I was supporting down at Hinkley against nuclear power. I very much believe in doing practical things on the ground like Transition Down Towns does to support a different sort of economy. But ultimately, the way we change things is in Parliament and local councils, even in Brussels. So we have to work to elect Greens everywhere at all levels of government. And if you're part of that broader Green movement, we need your help. And we'll support what you're doing, and we'd ask you to support us. And if you're Friends of the Earth and you've got a local Tory council and you think, well, I'm going to have to lobby the Tory council, we don't mind if you deliver a letter that's after dark. It's okay. That's fine. So, the fact is, people at the moment, I believe, voters, are really hungry for answers. They're hungry for a new way of thinking about things. I barely need to mention that since I'm in university, I suppose I better. The Green Party is the only party that believes in zero tuition fees. We believe that education is a public good. And we think that when you leave university, you shouldn't have sitting on your shoulder a huge weight with a giant amount of debt. You should be able to leave university with your degree and go on and take whatever job you think best suits you and that you can best contribute in. And if that means it's a very low-paying job that will really serve society but perhaps isn't very well rewarded, then what you need to do is be able to go and do that freely and without that great weight on your shoulder. I know lots of people who've gone into the city, gone into banking because, well, I can clear my debt in 3 years and that'll be really wonderful, and then, you know, I can think about buying a house and all of that. And they have a pretty miserable life. And they're not making any really useful contribution to society in a way that they can be contributing in a job that they might much prefer to do and much more enjoy doing. Now, everyone will always say, oh, but, you know, the budget's so difficult and we can't possibly afford no tuition fees. Well, I can say to you, absolutely we can afford no tuition fees. I can say that because in the 2010 general election, the Green Party, we had our first ever fully costed budget. And I was partly involved in writing that budget. And I can tell you absolutely that it did add up, because Channel 4 went through that budget with a fine-tooth comb. They went through the manifesto, checked up and asked a whole heap of questions. They came back to me, the bits I'd done, about some questions about what did this mean and what did that mean. And the really sad thing is, after they found that it did add up, they didn't do a story about it. Because the political party's budget adding up and then presenting an entirely different way of doing politics, doing economics, doing world, that wasn't really exciting. What they really wanted to do was find something where the numbers didn't add up and that they did a nasty story about that. And there's a final message that I'm going to leave you with before we get to questions, because I'd like to leave plenty of time for questions, is we need to get the message out. We need to tell the world that the Green Party has a vision of a fairer, better future for Britain, of a Britain that's part of a world where we're not treating the planet as though it were a mine and a dumping ground, and the poorest as though they were rubbish. But we need you, people in this room, all of your friends, all of our supporters, to be out there spreading the story, because it's up to you. You are people who can make a difference, particularly you, the young people. It's your world that we're shaping now, and we can and must make it a much better one.